So I'm guessing that when we were promised that the story would continue next month, what actually was meant was that we were just going to continue onward with some more unrelated tales of Sonic and Tails traveling around Mobius, looking for Naugus yet again. One of my big complaints when it comes to this globetrotting arc so far is that it hasn't really gone out of its way to show us a whole lot more of the world beyond what we've already seen. Sure, we saw Mercia, but that was mostly a means of tying in with what was happening in the Knuckles book at the time. That was barely a Sonic story, and more of a side story for Knuckles at the time, which did help to expand the world, to be fair, but that was a single moment taking place while we were still being introduced to stuff happening in Knuckles' story. So the whole thing with Mercia and Albion, while appreciated, was more of a one-off. With Sonic and Tails going around the world, so far they've crossed over with Knuckles, gone back to Down Under, traveled over the water, and also seen a mountain on fire. For as long as this arc has been going on, it really doesn't feel like we've seen very much. This issue does actually go out of its way to change that, though you wouldn't really know considering the cover, which is one of the more boring ones we've had so far, just a shot of Sonic and Tails running at a slant towards the reader against a generic pink and purple lined background. I do like the perspective on the background, as it does give the illusion of traveling through a bit of a psychedelic tunnel. And the rendering of Sonic's tornado feet as he runs here is actually pretty cool too, but the poses on the characters and their expressions, it's not bad, it's just a bit on the unimaginative side. And of course it commits the worst offense a comics cover can, which is to tell me almost nothing about what is actually inside the issue itself. All I know is that it's going to feature Sonic and Tails, which is a bit of a given since they're kind of the main characters and all. We open to the tornado crash landing. Well, not wasting any time getting this started, I see. Sonic and Tails aren't sure what's going wrong, but for some reason the controls just aren't working at all. And so Sonic has to set the plane down, only to crash into the remains of a tree, severely screwing up the front propeller in what is honestly a really well done 2-page spread to start off the story. Icon. While neither of them are hurt, they don't have any way of repairing the plane, and neither of them really know where they are or how far they are from any sort of friendly civilization. Before they have to worry too much about that, a bunch of tanks and a truck out of Mad Max Light come rolling up towards them. A gray rabbit, a lizard, and a coyote hop out and tell them to come along, because they don't have much time. They even seem to know Sonic by name. Then, right afterwards, we make a rather unexpected hard cut to check in on Snively and the other prisoners in the Devil's Gulag, including our old SO abusing sleazebag Drago, who is having a hoot and holler at Snively, who is monologuing, mostly to himself, about how superior he is to everyone else in there. I assume that'll play a part later on, because after that, we cut back to Sonic and friends as they ride the tanks through the desert. Turns out the rabbit is named Jack. Get it? And that he and his crew have heard all about Sonic, and that he's become pretty legendary around these parts. But before anything more can be discussed, they're waylaid by a large army of Robians heading their way. But these Robians aren't like the ones back home. They seem to still be under some form of mind control, as they're acting like the drones that were under Robotnik. And they're packing heat, firing high-powered lasers at the tanks to try and divert and separate them. Sonic jumps down and creates a massive tornado around him to throw the Robians out of the way, and hopefully disable them for a while Tails muses on why the Robians here haven't regained their free will like all the ones around Mobotropolis and Knothole have. No one really has an answer for him at the moment, and now with the way clear, it doesn't take much longer before they reach their home, a massive city under some sort of force field that looks pretty damn impressive if Sonic's reaction is anything to go by. We once again cut, this time into outer space, to some sort of large satellite that seems to be activating something, with a green-tinted hand tapping out some commands on the console, activating something. We cut back to Sonic and Tails, who both receive a hero's welcome in the city and are even shown a very, shall we say, patriotic-looking statue of Sonic holding up the flag of what I assume is the Acorn Kingdom. Sonic seems rather stunned to see this, and everyone pours him a drink as Jack says that with Sonic here, it might not be long before they won't have to worry about dealing with the Robians hammering away at the force field protecting their city, with a panel showing off just that. Cut back to the Devil's Gulag again, where Snively is still fantasizing about all the cool things he's going to do after he's free. But the other prisoners are starting to get a little bit tired of all his peacock preening, and say that if he wanted to free himself, he probably would have done so already, daring him to actually prove how useful he is. The pressure gets to Snively, who, in his nerves, ends up dropping the nail file he had been using for its intended purpose a moment ago, before the locks on all their cells suddenly disengage, with all of them attributing their sudden newfound freedom to Snively. We once again cut back to the now named Sandblast City, where Sonic and Tails are recovering from a night of long celebration, Sonic still out cold. Tails goes to take a look outside, but finds that they've been locked inside their room, and it's only thanks to a conveniently placed skylight that he's able to escape. Outside, Jack and his cohorts are getting ready to cover up the biplane just as Tails comes down and asks what's going on with the plane. Jack says that it was sand clogging up all the instruments inside. While they've done their best to clean the thing up, they figured they'd just mothball it for a few weeks. Tails is indignant, saying that they can't hang around for weeks since they still have to stop Naugus. Sonic shows up, much to everyone's surprise, stating that he's okay with sticking around for a while longer, since Naugus is still going to be out and about no matter what time they decide to leave, and just wants to know what Jack's problem is at the moment. And we cut to one more full-page spread of Snively looking very out of his element, while the others stage a full-on prison riot, ending the story. This is actually a pretty good start to the story so far, and there's actually not a whole lot that I'm hesitant about here too. The setup is nice, it takes us to a new location on Mobius to look at, and introduces a few new characters to us, who seem to be on the up and up, but obviously have some ulterior motives. This part is a little on the short side, mostly owing to the backup story we'll be taking a look at soon, but I think it works well, and introduces a very nice mystery in the existence of Robians who still don't seem to have their free will back, as well as Jack and company's obvious distrust of Robians in general. The side story with Snively and Co. is actually handled well here too. It's not nearly as invasive as other side stories that we've had. It's quick and helps set up future potential for all of these villains getting loose from their cells and becoming a problem for the Kingdom of Acorn in the future. Though to be fair, I do have to at least point out that, while it was handled well, this is another plot thread that is added to the pile of ongoing stories that we now have to keep track of that are all happening simultaneously. Art-wise, it's also pretty solid too. It's always a joy to see new character designs in this style, and Steve Butler does a good job with everyone here, particularly the environments. Sure, we're mostly in a desert, but it's got some nice variation to it. The city really does look interesting, and his action shots, such as the plane crash landing, is very nicely handled in my opinion. Fun fact, Jack and most of his crew are actually meant to be homages to classic Looney Tunes characters. Jack is the most obvious, being a stand-in for Bugs Bunny, and his design is actually pretty similar while being legally distinct, the best kind of distinct. So yeah, I like how this story is starting, and it's the sort of adventurous story I've been hoping to get out of this arc. And it's not being crunched into a single issue, so it actually feels like it'll have a bit of time to breathe. So yeah, good on you, comic, but you still have a chance to disappoint me. Let's take a look at the backup story that will continue Jeffrey's tale. We open up exactly where we left off, Jeffrey returning to his apartment and discovering that someone is in there, waiting for him. He loads up his crossbow, but someone next to him, a small round fellow, suddenly explodes, knocking him to the floor, with someone else imploring him not to shoot. He's helped up by a rather friendly and eloquent robot who identifies himself as Heavy, and says that Jeffrey is his and his friend's last hope, stating that he's a cybernetic drone designed for tapping into any database, which is how he found out about Jeffrey. Jeffrey's willing to take someone on board with his skill set, but he's not so sure about the pile of ash that used to be his friend. Heavy states that his friend, Bomb, is just fine. Every time he explodes, he can just re-upload his consciousness into a new shell, good as new. And after that explanation for how their abilities work, we cut to the next day, where everyone is gathered at the base. Jeffrey is demonstrating a new laser weapon to them, stating that it's not something that freedom fighters get, only super secret special ops agents. And that is what he wants them all to be, with the mission of protecting the monarchy from any and all threats, both internal and external. To that end, he leads them to a secret training facility where he explains they'll be learning how to engage the enemy and how to survive as well. Not sure who all these other folks are here if they aren't part of the team, but whatever. Jeffrey decides to start their training right away, starting with Hershey, and then he dumps her into a giant tank of water underneath her. Hershey is immediately put off by this, considering that she's not a very strong swimmer, and then she gets attacked by a giant robot shark. Okay, I get that they're going to be put in some very dangerous situations and all, but I'd think putting your new recruits in a life or death situation on their first day of training is a good way to either kill or discourage them. In fact, Hershey immediately thinks to herself that she regrets her decision to enlist. She's saved pretty quickly though by Valdi, the chameleon guy, we finally get his name, chucking bomb into the shark's jaws, blowing it up, while the others help them out of the water, where Jeffrey has the audacity to state that she'll be learning how to refine her strengths while working on her weaknesses, like her swimming. Though he does turn around and compliment them for their coolness under pressure and their teamwork, stating that as a team, they have to think of each other before themselves first and foremost, before giving them all a 5-minute break, and then it's back to work, ending the story. This is another short one, and I'm not really sure how I feel about it still. I think this was a bit better than the introductory chapter because it isn't quite as splintered. We do have 2 different scenes, but the first scene introduces us to our final characters, and the second establishes them as a team, somewhat. It just establishes Hershey as a bit of a weak link because it immediately exploits a weakness of hers. Stu and Heavy don't really do anything in this scene, unfortunately. Though our chameleon friend does show himself to be competent, while Bomb, well, he's a constant regenerating bomb that can blow himself up whenever he needs to. Still, it's still missing something very crucial to these sorts of stories, and that's a reason to care about these characters. I went into this already not liking Jeffrey, so that's already a strike there. Hershey at least has her sympathetic backstory, but here again she's portrayed as a weak link, and hasn't really shown a huge amount of personality. Stu is there, Valis has the makings of at least something of a personality as the semi-retired veteran, and Heavy and Bomb, well, Heavy at least shows something of a personality in his introductory scene, and Bomb, being basically a mute character, skates by with his design, which is admittedly kind of adorable. From a personal perspective, yeah, I do prefer his game design to his design here, but come on, he's essentially a smiling, sentient cherry bomb. That's cute. Yeah, the art is good, I don't have a lot to talk about there. Except that I love this little detail here when Bomb bounces over to the group out of nowhere after he blows up the shark. That's some quality visual storytelling, and it's a funny cartoonish gag that I appreciate. Next up, it's time to look at Sonic the Hedgehog issue 63 to see if both of these stories here can continue to hold on to my interest. The first one has it, the second one is trying to take it, so we'll have to see what happens. I'll see you next time, everyone.